17. That's how many people RFK Jr., yes, the now Secretary of Health and Human Services under President Trump, has just fired from the CDC's Vaccine Advisory Board. 17. Whoo, that's a lot of people. Well, the pearl clutching from the so called public health officials, it has now begun. These experts now are crashing out, and things are about to get a little spicy. But here's the question we should all be asking ourselves, if these people are supposed to be protecting our children, why are they scrambling like roaches when the lights come on? Like, what exactly are they hiding? Because last I checked, sunlight is supposed to be the best disinfectant. Unless, of course, you've got something to hide. So, coming up next on Unshakable with April Chapman, we're going to talk RFK. We're going to talk about submuscular injectable biologics. That's my term for vaccines. And we're going to see how far along we get before YouTube tries to shut this video down. Let's get into it. Grace and peace, you guys. Welcome back to Unshakable with April Chapman, where today we're going to cut through the noise of the culture. We typically do discuss politics, but today we're going to talk about a little bit of propaganda, all filtered through the word of God. So on today's show, we're going to talk about this tug of war that's happening between RFK Jr. and the CDC.
Health and Human Services Secretary RFK Jr. is making some controversial moves at the health department. Kennedy, a vaccine skeptic, is claiming it's all to restore public trust in vaccines. In a Wall Street Journal op-ed, Kennedy announced he is removing and replacing all 17 members of an expert panel of vaccine advisors. Kennedy claims the group is, quote, plagued with conflicts of interest. So let's bring in CNN medical correspondent Meg Terrell to understand what this all means. Meg, you know, Kennedy has made this clean sweep of this expert vaccine panel. What will be the biggest impact of this?
Well, Pamela, what I'm hearing from folks both on the panel and externally in the public health world is that they're concerned that particularly physicians, who are the most trusted advisors especially for parents deciding whether to vaccinate their kids, that physicians won't have this trusted panel that's been around since 1964 to depend on to go to understand what the recommendations are for vaccines. And perhaps an external source may need to be established to provide that kind of trusted guidance. This is the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, or the ACIP. This is this expert group of outside advisors to the CDC that meets in public and makes recommendations. All of their conflicts of interest are all stated, and occasionally they recuse themselves if there is something that's considered an issue. But folks that I've talked with said that these folks are extremely well vetted. This is a group of doctors, infectious disease researchers, and pediatricians, all now getting dismissed. One public health person I spoke with, Dr. Michael Osterholm, called the idea that RFK Jr., who has spread distrust in vaccines himself, is doing this in order to restore public trust. He said that's like the arsonist complaining about fires in the neighborhood.
Now, RFK, he just cleaned house, literally firing every single member of the CDC's Vaccine Advisory Committee. Now, the CDC and their allies in Big Pharma, they are absolutely on the attack. The goal is to try to discredit him at every turn. Now, they've been trying to discredit RFK ever since he was appointed to this role. But let's be real. If transparency is the enemy of your system, maybe your system has something to hide. Now, I personally absolutely do believe that the CDC has something to hide. I believe that the CDC has something to hide. I believe that the pharmaceutical industry has something to hide. There are even many physicians that I know they too have something to hide. So let's go ahead and discuss the shakeup, shall we? What actually happened? Well, RFK, he removed all 17 members of the Vaccine Advisory Board. And this board has been in place for decades, okay? And what this board does essentially is rubber stamp the vaccine schedule with little to no pushback. So this is really about accountability here. I've always had questions about this advisory board. And if you do a little research as to who's on this board and how they got appointed, it raises a whole lot of questions. But the truth is, many individuals on this board, these aren't neutral experts. Okay, they're career bureaucrats. They rotate in and out of big pharma and government like a revolving door. And the people who are most affected are parents, and they are nowhere to be found at the table. Ultimately, the parents are affected, and then subsequently their children, because the children are on the receiving end of these submuscular injectable biologics. So let me ask you, do you think that parents, the ones who are actually raising these children, should they have more of a say in vaccine decisions than bureaucrats and pharmaceutical lobbyists? I, for one, am a mom. I am a mom of 4 children. I actually have 2 vaccine injured children, but by God's grace, they are doing well and they are thriving. But it doesn't erase the fact that when I, as a young mom, had legitimate questions and I was doing my research, that I was shut down, fired from pediatric practices, the Gestapo and authoritarian way that this whole conversation is happening and is typically framed. I am glad that this is happening, because this needs to stop. Now, the CDC, they are in full meltdown mode, and I love to see it. Is because their talking heads are all over the media saying that, RFK is dangerous and that he is anti-science. However, I've actually read RFK's book. I have actually read the vaccine inserts. I have read so much medical literature on this topic that I can talk to you about this subject until I am blue in the face. But here's what I need to ask. When we think about this logically, if vaccines are as safe and effective as they claim, wouldn't transparency help their case? Like, wouldn't transparency, disclosure, build a little bit more trust? I don't know. I'm just a C student asking some questions. Now, when I ask that question to a normal thinking person, they would be like, well, sure, I would agree with that. But instead, what are we seeing? They are panicking. They are smearing. They want to censor you and anyone else who dares to broach this discussion. They act like a used car salesman who's screaming at you when you ask to see the Carfax, right? So if the car is clean, why are you so nervous? Why are you all in your feelings and don't want me to ask any questions, and you don't want to provide the data that I am asking to see? It's because there is a track record that nobody wants to talk about. So let's go ahead. Let's talk some history for a little bit. After 1996, a lot of people don't realize this or have ever charted the trajectory of where this all began. But the childhood vaccine schedule exploded during that year. Kids went from a handful of shots to dozens before starting kindergarten, right? So basically, the shots that I took as a child, by the time my child was born, it was triple that amount. And what else exploded? Some would say, oh, it's anecdotal, and we just have better technology to diagnose. Yeah, right. Well, we saw autism rates explode, developmental delays, stuff that we had never seen in children, childhood allergies to things like peanuts and just basic foods. A lot of children were unable to eat. We saw more children with asthma pumps than we knew what to do with. I remember when I was in kindergarten, it was like one kid with asthma and he was real fat and overweight. Fast forward 1996, 1997, everybody has asthma. Everybody has an autoimmune condition. These children are on 1, sometimes 3 and 4 pharmaceutical drugs. Even pediatric cancers exploded. Now, you don't need a PhD to notice this pattern. I noticed it in my own family, the children born before 1996, and then the ones born after. You're like, what is going on? What is all these behavioral issues? Now, a conversation can be had with or surrounding the fact that when the vaccine schedule exploded, we also saw a lot of things happen with our food supply, like these dyes and artificial sweeteners that really weren't present in mass before became a staple in the diets of these children. Now, am I saying that vaccines are the only cause? No, but you can't deny that the timeline matches, and asking the question should not make you an enemy of the state. That's what I'm saying. Children are not commodities. And what we have seen, I've told y'all, the government believes it is God. And I've always been, my goal has been to educate and inform parents that you don't share custody of your children with the government. If scripture reminds us that, behold, children are a heritage from the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is a reward, children are blessings. They are not revenue streams for Big Pharma, but we have absolutely seen that. We have absolutely seen that if you can get them from the cradle, you can absolutely keep them dependent on your system to the grave. I'm reminded in Ephesians 5:11 that we are to take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead we expose them. So that's exactly what RFK is trying to do. He's exposing the darkness. He's turning on the flashlight, right? And we are seeing the roaches scatter. And this is why you're going to see the smear campaigns commence. And so what I want to talk about now is parental rights, because parental rights are on trial. I cannot tell you how many parents that I've spoken to who were bullied by their pediatrician. And to be fair, the pediatrician is like, he's like the gatekeeper, or she is like the gatekeeper. They're already low on the totem pole in terms of medical professions, or should I say, when it comes to the medical industrial complex, the pediatrician is the gateway. They're usually the lowest paid, and their job is to gatekeep and introduce and inculcate your children to a lifelong acceptance of pharmaceutical intervention. That is my opinion. You don't have to agree with that. And if you are a pediatrician, I'm not going to apologize for what I'm saying, but if you've gone to medical school and you go into the field of pediatrics, like most physicians, you're dealing with a lot of student loan debt. You've got a lot of college debt that you're trying to repay, and you're trying to make a living. To be fair, you are trying to make a living, and there is a lot of pressure from the pharmaceutical industry to negatively influence a lot of the decisions that these pediatricians are making. The average pediatrician, if they're honest, they've never read a vaccine insert, right? Not like the one pager. I'm talking about the insert. Ask a pediatrician to name you 5 ingredients inside of the average childhood vaccine, and they can't, okay? They can't. So when I talk to parents who tell me that they've been bullied by their pediatrician, I believe them, because I was bullied by plenty of pediatricians. Okay, I was not given true informed consent. You're not told the risk. All they do is hand you a piece of paper. You are told to sign it. There's no conversation or discussion about it. And all of this is happening while you're being threatened with losing care if you even dare to ask to modify said schedule. If your child has an adverse reaction, oftentimes your concerns are not taken seriously. They will dismiss it and say, oh, just get a baby some Tylenol and go to sleep. And a lot of parents gave their baby some Tylenol and their babies are not here. Okay? So this is a very serious matter. And I want to paint this clearly for you. Like I said, pediatricians, they are some of the lowest paid MDs. That's just a fact. They don't make money off of surgeries or high risk treatments like other modalities do. But the vaccines, yes, the vaccines are their bread and butter. They get bonuses for pushing this onto parents. They are under constant pressure to hit quotas. This is why I say they are the gateway drug into a lifelong pharmaceutical dependency. Why? Because if you can injure or weaken a child early, you create a customer for life. Here's what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that pediatricians go into the field of pediatrics and their goal is to do that. A lot of them do not realize that that's what they're doing sometimes until years into practice, when they're like, why do I keep seeing these same children, this revolving door of ear infections, this revolving door of gut issues and autoimmune disorders and asthma and skin problems? Like, these kids are sick. A lot of these kids are sick from the womb because they're now targeting the mamas when the baby is in utero. This is a discussion y'all don't really want to have with me. But I'm saying that parents, I'm asking you, how many of you were actually given informed consent? How many of you were strong-armed and shamed or dismissed when you simply asked some questions, made to feel stupid? Oh, because you didn't go to medical school and you didn't spend time doing residency, you can't possibly know anything about this. Just give me your baby and let me shoot them up with this cocktail of injectable biologics. So the bigger picture for me is that this situation with RFK, this is more about than just medicine. This is about money. It's about power, right? It is about control. And it is important that we have more transparency and that the government works hand in glove with pharmaceutical companies, because the CDC right now, they are acting more like a marketing department than a watchdog. And so JFK Jr., he is threatening their bottom line by pulling their advisory committee out from the roots. And so we should expect the campaign smears and the outright lies and the attempts to discredit anything he's doing, that is going to come. So now, instead of answering questions, they're going to attack him. Instead of debating facts, they'll smear his character. Instead of proving transparency, they'll double down on the secrecy, because there's a lot of information that they do not want the American people to know. So I will ask again, if this system is really built on truth, why are they so afraid of the light? What? I don't know. What are they hiding? These are the questions that we need to ask. RFK just kicked over. He kicked over the CDC's golden calf. And now the so-called experts are scrambling to protect their idol. And so the deal is simple. If truth is on your side, you welcome scrutiny. Like, you don't run from it. You don't have anything to hide. But I am curious to know, what do you guys think? I want to hear from you. I need parents. Tell me in the comments down below, were you ever given true informed consent when it came to your child's medical care? Or did you experience the same medical bullying that so many of us experience that I described earlier in this video? I want to hear from you. Leave me down in the comments below. And if you're a pediatrician and you're like, I ain't really appreciate you castigating what I do for a living, but you didn't tell no lies. I did have a lot of debt coming out of medical school, and the way those pharmaceutical reps came out of office, them bonuses were looking pretty tempting. I did what I had to do to take care of me and mine. I get it. I'm just wanting to start the conversation. So I appreciate you joining me. Make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe, because this kind of conversation is what they don't want us to have. They want us to be quiet. But over here on Unshakable, we are never backing down. So until next time, you guys, stand firm, stay bold, and above all else, stay unshakable. Grace and peace. Thank you.